I thank the gentleman. Mr. Chairman, I rise today in strong support of H.R. 4315, the 21st Century Endangered Species Transparency Act. I also want to thank Chairman Hastings for all the work that he has done on this issue, and I also want to thank him for inviting me to be a part of the ESA working group and for including my bill, H.R. 4317, the State, Tribal, Local Species Transparency and Recovery Act, in the final version of this bill. In the 19th District, we've been facing a lot of these issues with the Endangered Species Act. We had the lizard prairie chicken, we've had the dune sage lizard, and some of the areas dealing with minnows. But one of the things that this bill does, and part of the bill that I introduced, is something that's very simple and straightforward and very common sense, and that is, it says we need to make sure before we make some of these decisions that we have the facts. Now, that's kind of a novel idea. When we have a lawsuit, everybody gets to present the facts. And so what we're saying, and when we begin to go down the road of listing, causing millions of dollars worth of expense, in some cases encumbering millions of acres of private property, we need to deal with the facts. Now, why are we bringing this bill up? Well, it's been pointed out that this bill is like over 40 years old, and over 1,500 species have been listed, and only 2% of those have been recovered. Now, imagine going to a doctor and you say, "Doctor, what is your outcome ratio?" He says, 2% of the time I have good outcomes. Or imagine buying a product where you say, "This product works 2% of the time." And so basically the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, does need reform, and my bill, this bill, begins to do that. What does it do? It just says that when the federal government has collected data and they are making the decision, they have to make all of the findings, all of the data they use to reach that decision available to the states and local governments and to the stakeholders. That seems fair to me. The other thing it says is that the local stakeholders and the local state governments and the local county governments have the right to present their facts. Now, one of the things that's important about that is that, I know a lot more about Lubbock, Texas than maybe somebody that lives in the state of Oregon or the state of New Jersey. So that local knowledge of, the habitat, the conditions, is an important part of the data. And so when you're dealing with the facts, then I think we're going to have better outcomes. And if that's the goal of the Endangered Species Act, then why are we trying to suppress the facts? I don't get it. So that's the reason that this is an important part of that. I noticed that the gentleman mentioned that he thinks that this bill somehow dictates what is the facts. Not true. What it says, though, is that all of the data that they collect, they have to present to the other stakeholders. And what it also says is that the data that the stakeholders and the county and local and state governments present, they have to consider that data. Now, if somebody's got a study about what they think the conditions in Lubbock, Texas are, we think
15 additional seconds.
We think that the people on the ground in Lubbock, Texas, or in West Texas, probably have better information and ought to be a part of that consideration. I encourage my colleagues to support 4315, and I thank the gentleman.